To them, the topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
First hour today, we're going to spend some time talking about guns and gun control. And of course, you know the drill. Sadly, every time there's a shooting, lots of debate about guns and gun control. And then after a while, we kind of face reality that not much will change. And then we get back to our various topics until the topic surfaces again with another shooting. I'm going to change it this time. I think there are some things we can and should do. And there are some very important topics that will come out of a conversation we're going to have with Frank Miniter. His new book, The Future of the Gun, is something we want to talk about. But again, if you look around, you can see that some are saying, you know, Mr. President, there are some answers, and you just aren't looking in the right places. Dennis Prager's column is entitled, "The Right Does Have Answers on Guns, Mr. President." Charles Kruthammer's piece the other day, "What Gun Control Advocates Mean But Dare Not Say Guns Should Be Confiscated." That comes from his comments about Australia, which we talked about a week ago. And then, of course, Ann Coulter, "The Problem Isn't Guns or White Men." So they're just a few of the commentaries that have surfaced over the last couple of days and weeks. And we're going to spend some time getting into this topic in a little more detail. And as always, welcome your phone calls. Frank Miniter is an individual we've talked with before. You might remember some of his books, Saving the Bill of Rights, Ultimate Man's Survival Guide, and The Politically Incorrect Guide to Hunting, to mention just a few. Former senior editor of Outdoor Life, and this new book published by Regnery, The Future of the Gun. Frank, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Hey, good to be back here.
You know, one of the things, we were going to do an interview with you, and then I think you were sick. Of course, now since Roseburg, Oregon, we have a lot more to talk about. But we've been hearing over the last couple of days and weeks now this idea of common sense gun safety laws. The laws aren't the issue. I mean, we had significant background checks in places like Oregon, and the mother of the shooter there actually obtained the guns legally. Matter of fact, the mother of the shooter in Sandy Hook did so. So I don't know that the laws are going to make any difference. What are your thoughts?
No, unfortunately, they're not. That isn't the way to go about this. The only thing to do with when it comes to the laws is actually to enforce them. You know, if you look at places like Chicago, which is the murder capital per capita of the United States at the moment, they actually have the least number of gun crimes being prosecuted on the federal level. That's out of all jurisdictions in the United States. As the murder capital of the United States, they have the least number of prosecutions. They're not going after the guy who goes in a straw purchase, a guy who can pass a background check, who buys a firearm for someone who can't pass a background check. They're not following up on those, and they're not solving the murder that are going on out there. They're not aggressively going out there and talking to the community and getting in there to find out who the bad guys are and arresting them and putting them in jail. They're just not backing up the gun laws where it really matters. Instead, they want to control the populace, the people out there who, by and large, don't commit crimes. People who have a concealed carry permit to carry a firearm, statistically, basically just don't commit crimes. It's less than 1%. There are some studies showing they're actually safer than police officers when it comes to gun crimes. So it's going after that populace isn't the solution to the problem. It's actually going after those communities where, unfortunately, you have gang violence and other things that are going on, and unfortunately not enough prosecution, not enough enforcement of those laws.
Let's, if we can, then maybe move to some of the technology. Obviously, we can have some conversation. I know as we open up the phones, all sorts of people are going to talk about the laws. But one of the things that's so unique about your book is you point out that we now have some opportunities using technology to begin to maybe answer some questions, let's just say, that parents might have. A lot of listeners right now say, you know, I would like to have a handgun in the home for personal protection. but I'm really afraid, even with all the various things that I might do. I might have a gun safe. I might have a gun vault. I might have it up on a high shelf. I'm still somewhat afraid that a child might get a hold of that gun and shoot himself or herself. But we now have a way through biometric scanners to actually provide a gun for those families if they wanted it, where only the father or only the mother could shoot it, and if a child got that gun, it would not discharge. True?
Yes, that technology is there, and it's being implemented. The problem is the politics is stopping that technology. The whole smart gun debate has stopped in that, unfortunately, the left wants to make it mandatory. In other words, you can't buy a gun that doesn't have that technology installed. Well, this is an emerging technology that hasn't proven itself yet. And as you talk to gun engineers and just use common sense, you find out that there's no way to instantly, even if the technology was perfect suddenly, to actually put it into every type and model and make a firearm that's out there. What that basically becomes then, if you still force that through, what the left wants to do, you end up with a massive gun ban and gun confiscation to get rid of those guns or to stop the sale of all the legal guns that are out there now. So right from its beginning, it's unfortunate that this is politicized because there are great products coming to market or near market, as I talked to engineers in the future of the gun I did, that are right there. They can use biometric scanners on, for example, there's one they use in 1911 that you actually can install a biometric scanner into the pistol, and that's a pistol that's been around since 1911. Was the U.S. Army's official firearm until 1985, and it's still one of the most popular handguns on the market today. You can actually install that into the grip of that, and it will read it actually takes a series of photos of your fingerprints, compares them to what's in the database, and within a second unlocks the gun. That's a cool piece of technology, but unfortunately it isn't talked about and isn't really readily available because of the politics of the issue.
And let's get back to that for just a minute, because I think as I framed the question, I hope you noticed how I framed it. If a couple would like to have that, if a father and mother would like to have that, so that I can make sure that Johnny and Susie cannot fire the gun, but I can or my spouse can, that I think would be something that a lot of families would welcome into their home. But if indeed the sort of anti-gun lobby says, no, every gun has to have this, I would have to say that you and I probably would not want that, because if the technology failed and there's a home invasion, I don't want it to go click, click. I want it to go bang, bang, don't I?
Absolutely. And it's been so politicized that former Attorney General Eric Holder actually played with the idea of making this mandatory across all guns out there, and then letting the government be in charge of what gun is turned on and turned off, so to speak. He was playing with that whole idea. Pretty futuristic stuff, but you can't blame a gun owner for being afraid.
Yes. Well, and when we come back from the break, I want to talk about another one, because there are some guns which we might want to be able to trace with GPS technology. I can just encourage our listeners right now, have you ever lost your iPhone or even just misplaced it? You probably already have used that technology to find it, because then you get on your computer, you get on your iPad, and you say, find my iPhone, and you realize, oh, it's under that stack of books, or, oh, wait a minute, I left it at this home. And so that same technology that we have available to us to find our iPhone could actually be used for certain guns, and those could be things that were used by police officers. You know, you may not want everybody to know where your gun is, but there may be certain ones you might want to. And it's just an illustration of a lot of things we're going to talk about today. When the president says the only solution is more laws, and I think you've already heard from Frank to say we already have the right laws, we just aren't enforcing them, that's not much of a solution. But, Mr. President, we think we do have some answers. Some of it involves technology, but again, it's stymied by the politics of all of this. So if you'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. We're going to get into all aspects of this, and the book not only deals with some of the technology, we have a whole chapter, for example, on the solution to gun violence, and we have chapters on what happens when citizens are not armed, and much, much more. But I did want to at least kind of pique your interest a little bit to show that we even have smart gun technology that might be an answer for some of the questions that people are asking and raising. A lot more we'll cover with our conversation today with Frank Miniter. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
How influential could Christian voters be in the next election? Their participation could be significant if they are registered to vote and then go out and vote their values in an intelligent way. Recently, Gary Fraser and George Barna were on my radio program to talk about their work through the organization United in Purpose. Let's look at Christian voter participation in 2012. There were 90 million born-again Christians of voting age. About 77 million of them were registered to vote, and 51 million of them voted in that election. That means there were 39 million eligible Christian voters who did not vote or were not registered to vote in 2012. The 39 million break down this way. 13 million were not registered, and 26 million were actually registered but did not go to the polls. Perhaps you can see the problem. When you have 39 million Christians who did not vote, it's like a high school football team where many of the players aren't even wearing the uniform, and there are others who are wearing the uniform but never get into the game. In previous elections, United in Purpose has worked to identify Christians who did not vote but have biblical values. They understand that many Christians do not have a biblical worldview, but using a massive set of databases, they cross-reference and are able to identify non-voters with a pro-life, pro-family perspective and then encourage them to pledge to vote in the next election. They're also encouraging pastors to address the moral and social issues of the day. Surveys of born-again Christians show that members of their congregation want biblical instruction on contemporary issues, but pastors are often afraid or ill-equipped to actually address those issues. It will be interesting to watch how these various programs of voter registration, get out the vote, and pastor support affect the 2016 election. We should see greater impact on the nation and our culture because of Christian involvement. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Provident Films, Woodlawn, the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city. Woodlawn, in theaters October 16th.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're hearing more and more about this idea of common sense gun safety laws. I don't know exactly what that means. I hope it doesn't mean that we need to have another assault weapons ban. We tried that back in 1994. After 10 years, it lapsed. And, of course, every study done on the impact of that ban concluded it did not reduce gun violence. But we think there may be some other solutions that certainly are appropriate. First of all, let's enforce the laws that are out there. But more importantly, there are some technological issues that might be helpful. And one of those, Frank, you mentioned in the book briefly, and that is we have been able to figure out where somebody leaves their keys, where somebody leaves their iPhone, because you can put a little marker on that and find it. I don't know that everybody wants a gun that you can begin to locate, but there may be a value, as say in a police department or others, to be able to find a gun. And again, GPS technology would allow us to keep track of those guns, right?
Exactly right. It's interesting. I sat down with ATF agents asking where illegal guns come from, where do criminals get guns, and I also spent time with inner city gang members, asking them where they get guns. And by and large, they're getting guns from a black market, which mostly come from stolen firearms. So it does make sense in that extreme for someone, say, with a polymer grip pistol, that they could put, theoretically, a GPS very easily inside that pistol so they could re-find that gun, potentially if there was a theft of that firearm. And storage and safe storage away from children, but also away from theft is an important conversation that President Obama should be having. It's a great way to stop this part of the problem without actually going to someone's home to check it, but actually just to work with gun owners in this respect is a great way to move forward with this whole thing. But yeah, when it comes to police officers, you're exactly right. It's interesting. And I talked to engineers who are ready to put cameras in the ends of guns and GPS right into the guns. So you know which way the gun is pointing, when it exactly was fired. It would actually take a timestamp when that gun was fired, when it was unholstered, and you'd have video down through that gun, so you could see exactly what that gun was pointing at, what that officer was seeing when, unfortunately, he had to pull the trigger on that firearm. So right away, at least the police department, the DA, and whether it was let out into the public, that had to be debated. But at least they would know right away what really happened. In Ferguson and places like this, we can see right away what happened, so the DA can know whether to bring charges or not, and we can subpoena that evidence and so on. Just to solve these issues right away, and to keep police officers, I think, for their own safety, to give them these tools so right away they can give the true story.
Yes, well, again, a camera and an ability to find some of those. And again, the idea of a biometric scanner. These are just a few of the technological ideas, which frankly would have eliminated a lot of the discussion and debate. And this is the kind of discussion we should have. We're having it today here on Point of View. I'm not hearing it in Congress. I'm not hearing it too much in the Oval Office, but we're certainly trying to have that. And if you'd like to join the conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Let's head out to Texas first. Randy, what would you like to say to us today?
And started from the Army, and being a father, there are two big things that I think we have to do. One, you have got to discipline or train. A well-disciplined soldier is a well-trained soldier. And the same way as God does us, God disciplines the ones he loves, we've got to train our children. And if we don't teach our children and we don't teach our teenagers and young adults the truth about weapons and how to use them and what they can do, then we're going to have some problems. Secondly, when we don't teach our children about gun safety and when they are not supposed to be used and how to appropriately use those tools, then they're doomed to get in trouble. But not real trouble. They're going to go to jail for a while and have a record? No. We need to have stiffer punishments. If you do something with a gun that you're not supposed to, like you hurt someone or you kill someone, then you need to get in harder trouble. Not sit in jail where we have to pay for you for 20 years or 40 years, but you either need to die yourself or do hard labor where you contribute back to society and you give back what you've taken away from others. And we just don't do that anymore. We pacify everything. We make it taboo. We say we're going to give it a law, we're going to give it a solution, but we put lip service, so we don't do anything. And our children are not being responsible adults. Our sons are not becoming great fathers, and our country is fading away.
Let me see if I can get some comments from you, Frank.
No, that's a very important point. He used gun safety in the proper use of the term, real gun safety. And that is something that I see from the National Rifle Association and the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the trade association for firearms manufacturers, really pushing gun safety. And actually, we've become a much safer nation as far as gun accidents go. They've gone down massively over the last 3 or 4 decades. And in fact, I have to give one kudos to the Obama administration, which really surprised me. The Department of Justice recently gave a grant to the National Shooting Sports Foundation for Project Child Safe, which gives locks to gun owners when they buy a firearm, and promotes different gun safety literature, throwing through those rules of what gun safety means and what that is, so we can teach that at our ranges and courses and to our children. So to see the administration actually do that, I was surprised because they haven't done any. I've been calling for them to do something, work with gun owners a little bit. So I do see some momentum there, but we have become a safer nation. But he's right. We have to reach out to people who may not have that good gun culture as part of their life, but are new gun owners, and show them how to safely handle, shoot, store firearms.
Well, let's talk about that other point that you made just in passing, and that is we have become a safer nation. The amount of crime has decreased. You wouldn't know that by watching the mainstream media, and you wouldn't know that by the overemphasis of some of these shootings, and we're oftentimes very selective. I mean, just think of the number of young children and young adults that have been killed, say, in Chicago or other places. We hardly ever talk about that, but, a shooting in Sandy Hook or a shooting in Roseburg, I mean, for very good reason, gets our attention, but it takes away from the fact that the crime statistics show that actually we're a safer nation we were just a few decades ago. True?
Absolutely right. It's beyond just the criminal element. Also, people who own firearms, there's less firearms accidents at gun ranges and so on, just by the 100 million plus gun owners in this country are actually statistically having less accidents because of the training that's come through from the NRA and other pro-gun groups. So it's out there, and I'm remiss when I see our government not working with those gun rights groups because of all the good they do. That could enhance that and give that to people. For example, the mother of this guy in Sandy Hook. I don't think they were exposed to the right type of knowledge. I mean, he literally had the gun safe in his room, and he could open that. He had the code to open that. It wasn't in her room, and he stole the guns for that Sandy Hook school shooting. He had access to them completely. I don't think, and she was a new member of the guns culture, and she was using that as a way to try to teach her child and try to help him. I think if she was influenced the right way, she would have known how to store those firearms the right way and might have seen a problem before it came.
Wow, very good. Just before we take a break, a lot of what I've been pulling from comes from your chapter here about guns go digital. But there was another point in there that I was going to ask you about even before I read the book, and that was that I'm always struck by the fact we have lots of listeners that are all over the country, but a good number up in the New England area and the Northeast. And I've always been struck by the fact that a lot of the gun manufacturers are there. Sig Sauer and Winchester and Colt. But you tell the story about Remington. I thought that was kind of interesting because it illustrates a point, and that is, on the one hand, you have Senator Schumer, who is really against guns, but was also bragging about the fact that Remington was going to bring gun manufacturing to New York. Now, it didn't turn out, but on the one hand, you have individuals that are grateful for the manufacturing of guns in their state and the contribution that those tax dollars make to their state and to their community. But on the other hand, they're really anti-gun, and I thought that was kind of hypocritical. Your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, Senator Schumer bragged about bringing Bushmaster, which is the gun used in the Newtown shooting.
Yeah.
It's an AR-15 style rifle, to New York to be manufactured, and it was for a short amount of time until Remington said, well, we don't like the politics here because they passed gun bans on those types of firearms, and they moved that manufacturing facility down to Alabama, which you see happening a lot in manufacturing. They're starting to move those politically incorrect guns to places where they're not so politically incorrect, where people understand what these things really are. But right, Schumer, and I went after his office. I'd look for a statement from him directly on that because there was actually a press release on his website saying how great this was, while at the same time he was saying all these guns should be banned. I mean, talk about hypocrisy. But of course, they didn't get back to me.
Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to also talk about some of the legal issues as well. In Chapter 6, you talk about, of course, Dick Anthony Heller, and that case went all the way to the Supreme Court. One of the articles we've posted today is whether or not another gun case would go to the Supreme Court. This one comes out of California, so our California listeners need to pay attention. And we're going to spend some time looking at what is the future of guns, and that, of course, is the title of this book. It's published by Regnery. You can probably find it in your local bookstore, but we also have a way for you to order it online. We also have this article by Frank Miniter there. And, of course, we have a link to his website, frankminiter.com, so you can find all sorts of great resources there. And if you are concerned about some of the gun control laws and some of the draconian ideas being put forward, when the president, for example, talks about Australia and says, well, there's a model for what we can have. Well, yeah, they had a gun buyback. You'd hear about that from the mainstream press, but it was a mandatory gun buyback. In other words, it's gun confiscation. And so we have to pay attention to some of those issues as well. If you'd like to join the conversation today, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. 1-800-351-1212. So we talk about guns and gun control, and this new book really talks about some of these changes that could actually make a difference if the politics didn't get in the way. The future of the gun. Frank Miniter with us. We'll take your phone calls right after this.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Medishare. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Medishare is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Medishare is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-87-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-87-BIBLE. That's 855-87-BIBLE.
A big thank you to members of Truth Team 360. You make this program possible. Not a member yet? Join today at pointofview.net. Click on Donate Now and become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
I'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Frank Miniter with us as we talk about his book, The Future of the Gun, but also want to talk about one of the articles that he has written for Forbes, which I thought would be of interest to you. Many of you are familiar with what's known as the Heller case, went to the Supreme Court, but some people are saying there is maybe a second case the Supreme Court could take out of California. And Frank, if you could, just before I take some more phone calls, let's talk about that case and what that might mean to the issue of guns and gun ownership.
Yeah, this is important stuff. First, the Heller case solidified the Second Amendment as an individual right, and then 2 years later, in 2010, the McDonald case incorporated it to the states, meaning all state and local governments also have to adhere to the Second Amendment of the U.S. Bill of Rights. But now the big questions that are before the courts, and you see lower courts fighting it out, and actually circuit courts calling out other circuit courts saying, you're wrong, here's the history, on what is reasonable gun control, what is unreasonable gun control as it goes for the U.S. Bill of Rights. And the Pruda case is fascinating because what you had is local officials, sheriff's departments and so on, police chiefs, deciding who got to get their Second Amendment rights or not, deciding personally, looking at the thing and not saying who fits according to the law and who has a criminal record and doesn't have a criminal record, but actually deciding just by their own biases who should get their constitutional rights and who shouldn't. And that came before the circuit court there, and it went one way, then went the other way. First it went for the plaintiffs, and then it went against the plaintiffs on a full circuit panel. So now that's being appealed, and we don't know if the Supreme Court's going to take it or not, but they haven't taken one since 2010. So these big questions are out there where circuit courts are calling each other out and what is reasonable and what is unreasonable restrictions on our Second Amendment within our Bill of Rights. When will they start to answer those questions? That's very interesting and very important.
So again, a lot of this had to do with the California Rifle and Pistol Association Foundation, and they were representing 5 individuals who wanted a concealed carry, and some people in the sheriff's department said, I just don't think I trust you, so you can't have concealed carry. And isn't that kind of what you're dealing with right now? Instead of, are there certain things that would disqualify you from having access to a firearm and your Second Amendment rights? We will instead allow bureaucrats or elected individuals to determine who can have a gun and who cannot?
Exactly. And to put that in context, realize, what if there was a local official who could decide whether or not you had the right to free speech or the right to due process? These are other rights protected within the U.S. Bill of Rights. Where is that? So there's a local official who can decide, well, I think you might be a victim. If you have a protection order, you've got a stalker officially. Okay, maybe we'll give you a gun. You can go through the process. But if not, then no. This is supposed to be the individual right. That's a restriction on government, not a restriction on the individual. If you look at the constitutional term, what the Bill of Rights really is, they're negative liberties, restrictions on government. So is the court going to look at that? Isn't going to look at that from an honest perspective? Right now, the way the court lies, it's been 5-4 twice for the individual right. But if one of those conservative justices happens to retire or whatever might happen to them and are replaced by a liberal justice, and that could happen now or it could happen if there's another person put in the White House who doesn't believe in the Second Amendment, we could easily lose this right and a 5-4 reversal of these decisions. That's how tenuous and close this really is.
Wow, incredible. Let's give some of you a chance to join our conversation today. So we'll go to Illinois and talk to John. John, thank you for joining our conversation today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm not a gun owner, but I have people around me that own guns. And I'm wondering what's going to happen to the guns if they are confiscated. What's going to happen to the guns that are worth, say one gun's worth $100,000. There's families out there that have hundreds of thousands of dollars tied up in guns. Some of these guns have never been shot. Some of them will never be shot. And what about the politicians? Are they going to have to get rid of their guns too? What's going to happen when they try to get rid of our guns, and then you got a criminal come in someone's house with a gun, and then all the guns have been confiscated, and then that one guy says, well, you're not going to take this gun, I'm keeping this gun, and then he pulls it out to shoot the criminal, and then when the police come in, he's not supposed to have that gun, so now we're looking at 2 criminals.
Sure. Well, let me get into that, because you have a chapter there about what happens to disarmed people. Oftentimes when people are talking about gun confiscation, they're talking about buyback, but nevertheless, what does that mean if indeed we do? Can we learn anything from other countries, for example, like the UK, like Australia and others that have actually been able to reduce the number of guns out on the street? I'm not sure that's ever been effective in Australia, because there are certainly a lot of guns there still to this day, but what can we learn about what happens when we disarm the American people or disarm people in other countries?
Yeah, and to try to answer that question, there's so much to that to that question. I looked very specifically at England because of their gun confiscation over time, but the last one just took place in 1996 when handguns basically became completely illegal unless you're in law enforcement. And what has that done to homicide rates? What has that done to other crime rates? And actually, it was very hard to determine. The more I talked to Scotland Yard and local police departments and officials, the more I found out that they really didn't want an answer nationally from the UK on their crime statistics. They keep it very murky on purpose. Their politics are infused with the studies that they publish, so it's very hard to actually come up with, what is their actual murder rate. They claim it's something, but when you start to dig down into it, you find all sorts of murders that aren't listed within their official homicide rate, so it's very dishonest. And then you look at their aggravated assault rate and other crimes, you find out that they're actually statistically higher per capita than the United States and many other countries in the free world, and you start to why. It's very hard to determine. There's a great Harvard study that goes deep into that I get deep into in the book that compares a lot of nations and finds that many, Finland, Sweden, that have massively higher gun ownership rates, even than us, that have lower homicide rates than us. So then there's something culturally going on there. Just a lot of questions to answer, and of course that's why I ended up writing a book on the topic, but there's just so much to that.
Well, and I think we might just point out that some people might say, are you really serious about banning private ownership of handguns? Yes. I mean, when you had the Olympics, interestingly enough, England's Olympic pistol team had to go to another country to practice before the 2012 Summer Olympics in London because of that. And so you can begin to see that we are talking about disarming a lot of individuals. And as you point out, some of these statistics are a little bit murky, but when you look at some of the research done by John Lott or some of the new studies that have just come out that are being published, it does seem to suggest that at the very least crime does not go down, and in some cases it seems like crime goes up.
When you confiscate guns, it sure does. And you can see that in our inner city areas to our urban areas where gun ownership, legal gun ownership go up, crime rates, homicide rates tend to go down. More guns do equal less crime, and that's been peer-reviewed on John Lott's study to try to disprove him, and over again, they found out that, no, he's right.
Let's see if we can take another phone call. We'll go to Alaska this time, and in Alaska, KJNP. Mark, thank you for calling today.
Hi, Kirby and Frank. Thanks for speaking about this subject. I think it's an important thing. And by the way, I'm a supporter of Point of View. And I wanted to make a couple of points. One is when you guys were talking about technology and having GPSs installed in future handguns and so forth, there's a downside to that, and I think it's serious, and that is that it kind of paves the way for a backdoor to gun registration, because if you can track your own firearm, so can others, including bad guys, and they could know where you're keeping it. So thieves, if they were able to hack the database or the GPS system, then they would be able to know where you're keeping it, and et cetera, and who has them, and so on. And so that's one downside to doing that. I think it's a bad idea because gun registration was the first step toward gun confiscation with the Nazis, and I think that we don't want to repeat that. And another point is, I think that in addressing the gun violence in our culture, teaching our young people, our children, how to handle them safely, and to just be aware that it's not like with my son, I don't let him point his dart gun at people. There's the first rule of gun safety: always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. Yes. And that way, even if it goes off, nobody gets hurt. And he understands that. He can recite that, and he has learned not to point his dart gun at people. That's off limits. And so there's certain things that we need to discourage them from doing the wrong thing and encourage them to do the right thing. Guns are for hunting and for self-defense and so forth. And I think that the problem is it's not the tool that the implement that's used for violence, like a knife or a gun or a automobile, that's not the problem. People, could use a fire extinguisher to hit somebody over the head with, and that doesn't mean fire extinguishers ought to be banned or controlled.
We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Frank Miniter with us for just a few more minutes as we talk about his book, The Future of the Gun, and the whole issue of gun control and gun rights and Second Amendment. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Mark raised a good question, and I don't think we would want to have the GPS locators on all guns, but if you just had those, for example, on the police force, or if you had a built-in camera, some of the controversy about Ferguson would not have taken place with the camera, and some of the problems where guns that were actually taken from police officers and used against them because they didn't have, say, a biometric palm print or something like that, that would solve some of the kinds of criminal issues that we've been debating over the last couple of years.
I certainly agree. And I would like to see PDs had that installed, or at least body cameras, but preferably in the firearm to get that point of view. But I do believe in consumer choice. So if a person does want some kind of GPS locator or other device in their handgun in case it gets lost or stolen, just like some people put them on now on their vehicles, that's their decision. If they see that's being used in a nefarious way, they should be able to disable it or take it off. It shouldn't be a law forcing them to, but I do believe in consumer choice.
And again, people that like James Bond movies, you talk about in the book that, and I remember this in the 1989 film, License to Kill, Q gives Bond a gun that then someone tries to kill him with and is unable to do. And of course, in the 2012 James Bond movie Skyfall, Bond is given a Walter PPK by Q, which had a biometric palm print scanner. If somebody wanted that and they wanted to make sure that only they or their spouse could fire that gun, but no one else, whether it's a criminal or a child, could do so, they should be allowed to do so. But the problem is, as you've pointed out, you have individuals, especially those who are sort of anti-gun in the first place, want to put them in all the guns, and that, of course, raises the question that Mark just raised. And more importantly, then you even have the former Attorney General saying, yeah, let's put this in so then I can even turn it off and I can determine which guns will work and which guns won't work. Now, that is Big Brother, isn't it?
Absolutely. And actually, I interviewed the president of Kodiak Arms, which he's developed a smart gun, who sat down with Attorney General Eric Holder, and Holder said that, and according to this gentleman there, Kodiak Arms, he said, no way, I'll burn my technology down before I'll let you make it mandatory.
Yes. Well, let me take one more phone call real quickly. We're almost out of time, but again, if you would like to join us, 1-800-351-1212, Ohio, WGGN. Chris, thanks for calling today.
Hi, guys. How are you doing today?
Chris, what's on your mind?
I'll just make a comment and get off. I think we lose sight, the root of the Second Amendment, and I could be totally off base, but I think it's for us to have guns to fight with our military if there's an invasion, and also to protect ourselves of uprising of government. And I think everybody wants to implement laws, but I believe focus on the root of the problem is, I think, just plain fatherlessness in our country. So, for violence and with guns. But I'm for the Second Amendment, and I don't have a gun, so I'll just let you guys make a comment.
Sure.
Thanks.
Well, and again, if you think about this for just a minute, Frank, I mean, Lexington and Concord was about a gun control issue, wasn't it, in the broadest sense of the word?
Oh, it literally was. The British troops were going to seize an arms depot to disarm the colonists, and they fought them back. That's exactly what it was about.
Yeah, so again, I just think it's an illustration of that concern. You know, we've talked about this for self-defense and protecting against the military. We even talked about hunting. But I noticed in one of the pictures here, you enjoy three-gun competition. There are a few others around the table that do as well. So another part of that is just competition. And it seems to me that when people want to say that, well, you can have a gun for hunting, they're eliminating all the other reasons. And Chris reminded us of one, Mark reminded us of another, but even just the sport aspect of guns, it's certainly a very important aspect that never seems to get mentioned in any of these gun debates.
And the shooting sports are growing, fantastically growing, and more women are involved now in the shooting sports. I see them at my club and other shooting ranges. They're actually, a lot of gun clubs and gun stores will have women's only night where women get together and shoot and teach each other to shoot for self-defense, but also for sport. It's a lot of fun.
Well, again, let's just, before we let you go, talk about how people can use your book and then your website, because some people might say, I really don't know a whole lot about guns. I don't know how they're manufactured. I don't know any of their history. You certainly go into that. Some people say, well, I think there's a problem if we disarm Americans, but I don't know what the studies actually show and what a gun-free America would look like. In some respects, you've tried to cover a lot of different aspects of the questions that the average person might ask, whether they're somebody that's very familiar with handguns and rifles, or whether they're maybe just getting into this for the very first time because of a concern over self-defense, or maybe they want to pursue it as a sport. Talk about some of the resources that are available.
Right. So I actually went to all the pros in this, the NRA lobbyist, an NRA historian at the National Firearms Museum to start the chapter showing the link between private ownership and public. I mean, government and the private citizenry, how they've always owned guns, and how those two are interrelated in ways that make us America that a lot of people don't really understand. Even gun owners a lot of times don't understand that story and how that isn't a part of our DNA. And then going through the gun technology and gun rights groups and what those actually mean to crime and to us as citizenry. Sitting down with in inner city, I was actually in Harlem sitting down with gang members, asking them where they get their guns and what they think about gun violence and gun control. And every one of them is amazing, told me that gun control doesn't work and makes it easier for the bad guys to do the bad things they do. On and on, this story, I don't think is told right by the media, because a lot of times the media doesn't really understand it. And I got into that with a former CNN founder and why CNN went the way it did and so on, just to interweave all this to show people what guns really are in America and how we can move forward to keep our freedom and make us even safer nation than we are today.
Well, again, I think you've done a very good job of kind of educating people, and we've had a conversation today that I wish was a national conversation, because we've talked about some of these technologies, we've talked about some of the politics, we've talked about some of the studies, and this seems to be just so missing in this debate about the Second Amendment. And of course, we've also mentioned that there is a case that may go before the Supreme Court on the issue of concealed carry coming out of California. So I hope, if nothing else, we've tried to add some very significant elements to this conversation on guns and gun control. So, Frank, thank you so very much for helping us do that today.
Anytime.
Well, we'll do it again. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to change topics, but I think you're going to really appreciate that. We're going to talk about a ministry that we can have in prisons, and certainly we talked just a minute ago about fatherlessness. That's certainly an issue. Going to talk about Malachi Dads and fathers, and we're going to get into that in a way that I think will be a real ministry to you and encouragement as well. But if you have more comments or questions about some of the things we've dealt with today, you can certainly go to the website for Frank Miniter. We have that available on our website. The book is entitled The Future of the Gun. It is published by Regnery, about 250 pages, but it really covers a lot of different aspects, including some of the conversation that I hope our society will have about these technologies that might provide some answers to all of the objections that anti-gun individuals have. So again, I hope that you appreciated the conversation, and if you'd like to listen to it again, you can download the podcast, or if you'd like to send it on to someone else, we've made that available for you as well. As we go to a break, let me encourage you to consider what you might do to support this ministry, and you might remember that last month we had a particular match, and I believe we have now finally been able to meet it, although we're waiting for a few more maybe checks to come in the mail tomorrow. Of course, today's Columbus Day, so we'll try to take some time to give you a final total, but I want to thank those of you that actually did participate. It was a great opportunity for us to actually challenge you to support this ministry, and if you did not have a chance to give in September and would like to do so in October, I certainly would encourage you to do so. You can go to the website pointofview.net and click on that button and find out more how to support this ministry. My commentary today is on Christian voters, the importance of Christian voters, and if you haven't read that, I encourage you to read it and maybe pass it on to others. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
From PureFlix Entertainment and Provident Films comes Woodlawn. Witness the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city.
I'm asking you right now to stand up and make a decision.
Woodlawn. Experience one hope, one truth, and one way. Starring Academy Award winner Jon Voight and Sean Astin. Woodlawn in theaters this Friday. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Have you ever wanted to walk where Jesus walked? To stand in places where the Apostle Paul proclaimed the gospel and saw the world and people's lives changed? In May of 2016, you can do just that on a 15-day tour of Israel and Greece with Point of View's very own Kirby Anderson. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience the Bible and history in places God chose to begin the spread of his message of grace. Join Kirby and Point of View for Journey to Jerusalem and Journeys of Paul. Learn more by clicking on the banner at pointofview.net. You've read the Bible, here's a chance to live it. pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
I think you're really going to enjoy this hour as we talk about how we can minister to those in prison and generally minister to individuals that need to have a biblical perspective about what it means to be a man, a father, a dad. And so I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And we bring back to the microphone a very good friend. We have known each other for decades. We've done radio together. I've been on his radio program. He's been on our radio program many times as well. Dr. Gene Getz, of course, is a graduate of Moody Bible as well as Wheaton Graduate School, New York University. Has taught at Moody Bible Institute and Dallas Theological Seminary. Author of a book we're going to talk about, The Measure of a Man, as well as some others, Malachi Dads, and that's all part of what we're going to be covering. But Gene Getz, it's just so fun to always have you in studio.
Oh, Kirby, boy, it has been a long time. I was trying to calculate way back when at KCBI when we were doing some of these programs out of the garage or out of your house or... How long ago was that?
Well,
anyway?
Even on Point of View, I remember in 1986 you were on the program, and the reason I know that is at that time I was teaching a class in media arts, and they now have a media arts program, and I was teaching a class on media, and Marlon Maddox asked me to be a guest host, and so one of my first guests, I think you were one of the first 5 I picked, was you.
Wow.
And that goes back to a studio that's miles down the road this direction. So
right. Wow.
That's almost 40 years that we've been just on this program.
That's right.
You've been in every one of the Point of View studios. And,
that's right.
Before it was built.
That's right.
You remember that?
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, so we owe an incredible debt of gratitude to Gene Getz. And we're also bringing to the microphone today Bob Kulick, and he is an individual who is now retired but was head of Awesome Acquisition Corporation, which was a distributor of the food and equipment and supplies to CC Pizza, and he has served on the board with Gene Getz as well as a number of others. So, Bob, thank you for joining us today as well.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to talk about some of the outreach, but a lot of this goes back to this book, and I meant to bring in my old copy. I'll hold this up today for people looking. This is the newer version of Measure of a Man. If you're in men's ministry, there is no way you have not read this book. There is no way you are not familiar with it. Over 1 million copies of a classic bestseller. Long before Steve Farrar was writing on these issues and Stu and all these other guys were writing about this, Gene Getz took the principles that you find in for the principles really for an elder and applied them to men. And I thought that is still one of the classic books. And even though I have a whole bookshelf of books on men's books, this one has an honored place in this new version. It's just a great opportunity to learn from that. And we're going to use this book today to look at some of the other issues that we'll be talking about.
That's right. And the exciting thing, Kirby, is I didn't anticipate this. Of course, there are a lot of things I haven't anticipated in my life, but this was rather unusual in the sense that I got a call from Awana. And, of course, I knew Awana Ministries in terms of the children's ministry. But I didn't realize they had started an Awana Lifeline ministry in prisons. And so they said, Jane, we'd love to use The Measure of a Man, but would you take it and break it into 2 books? We'll call it The Heart of a Man Part 1, The Heart of a Man Part 2, and build into these books interactive material so the men in prisons particularly can take this book and use it or these books and use them in what is called the Malachi Dads program. So as he talked to me, I thought, wow, this sounds like a wonderful opportunity. So that's what I did, and you have those 2 books in front of you there. And I designed them particularly for a prison population, but it's designed for men.
Yes.
The Heart of Man, Part 1, Part 2.
Any men's ministry could use
That's
these.
right. But the uniqueness of these two books, compared with The Measure of Man, though it's designed for interaction as well, I actually build in questions, discussion, interaction as they're working through it. And so that's how we got involved with this. And then, of course, Bob came into this situation uniquely. We first met each other, by the way, at Beaver Creek Men's Conference.
And I've been up there when you've been skiing. You are a good skier, by the way.
Yeah,
Anybody knows, Gene Getz knows that he is a very accomplished skier.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and Bob came up. We got acquainted, found out about his background, found out that he really was interested in ministry and, should we say, the second half of your life?
That's right. Exactly.
And so he joined my board, but there's an interesting background to this, Kirby, that you got to pick up on to get the continuity, and that goes back to Bob's involvement in prison ministry, and I've forgotten which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
They came very close together. Meeting you up at Beaver Creek, you had just finished the Life Essential Study Bible, and that was fantastic. I mean, I took a look through it and just was impressed. He talked about it being a 7-year project, and every one of us, as we looked through it, said, how did it only take him 7 years?
That's right.
It's an amazing Bible. But a short time after that, a friend of mine ended up getting incarcerated at the Rochester Federal Medical Center up in Rochester, Minnesota. And so a short time after going up there, I sent him one of the Bibles. And about a month later, he said, there's a number of guys up there that were very interested in it. He's been passing it around for them to look at. He said, they're all saving their money so they can buy this Bible. It's on the approved reading list. So they're saving up their money for it. And I said, don't have them save their money, I'll send them. So I sent about a dozen Bibles up to them, to a group called the Band of Brothers. And they would study the Bible together. In fact, we had a group, a men's ministry group down here called Wingman that I'm part of. And part of our study last year was a read through the Bible in a year. And we sent each day's study up to them in Rochester, so they would be studying alongside us.
That's great.
Read through the Bible in a year. But it just blossomed from there. Some of the guys ended up moving to other prisons along the way. So now we end up having prison ministry in Rochester, Leavenworth, Duluth, Lexington, Kentucky, and all from opening the doors of the Life Essential Study Bible.
Bob had absolutely no idea what was going to unfold here when that happened, and neither did I, because along comes this opportunity with the Malachi Dads material, and I get this request from Angola, and of course the Angola story is unbelievable.
And we want to get to that in a few
minutes. But they actually established the Malachi Dads program in Angola, and these books are designed for the Malachi Dads program. Actually 6 months worth out of that year's study. They had a group of graduates, and so Mike called me and he said, Gene, could you come for the graduation, and could you present each one of these men with a Bible? Well, I'd already been invited to speak at Moody's graduation, and I called Bob. I said, Bob, we got to take advantage of this opportunity. Would you go and represent me at Angola? And he had no idea. He didn't even know the story of Angola, I don't think, at that time, very little of it, and along with one of my associates. So Bob goes to Angola with my associate, Felix Heimberg, and picked the story up from there, because I guess maybe we're getting ahead of the Angola, but it fits right here.
Right.
What happened up there was so exciting.
Well, really what I should say, too, it wasn't that he called me up and say that we're ready to go, that he's going on this. He said, we've got this opportunity, speak to all these prisoners up there. There'll be people from all over around the world there. Are you available to go? And I thought I was going to be accompanying him.
Yes.
And instead and I said, yes, I'm free. And he said, great, I can't make it. You're going to fill in for me.
We're going to take a break and finish that story, but let me also mention, in addition to Measure of the Man, that Life Essential Study Bible is one that has those QR codes where you can actually watch. You can watch the videos, and you're going to do that now in your book. But we'll come back and continue that story, and a little bit later we'll open up the phones to give you a chance to join our conversation. Stay tuned. We'll have more right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
How influential could Christian voters be in the next election? Their participation could be significant if they are registered to vote and then go out and vote their values in an intelligent way. Recently, Gary Fraser and George Barna were on my radio program to talk about their work through the organization United in Purpose. Let's look at Christian voter participation in 2012. There were 90 million born-again Christians of voting age. About 77 million of them were registered to vote, and 51 million of them voted in that election. That means there were 39 million eligible Christian voters who did not vote or were not registered to vote in 2012. The 39 million break down this way. 13 million were not registered, and 26 million were actually registered but did not go to the polls. Perhaps you can see the problem. When you have 39 million Christians who did not vote, it's like a high school football team where many of the players aren't even wearing the uniform, and there are others who are wearing the uniform but never get into the game. In previous elections, United in Purpose has worked to identify Christians who did not vote but have biblical values. They understand that many Christians do not have a biblical worldview, but using a massive set of databases, they cross-reference and are able to identify non-voters with a pro-life, pro-family perspective and then encourage them to pledge to vote in the next election. They're also encouraging pastors to address the moral and social issues of the day. Surveys of born-again Christians show that members of their congregation want biblical instruction on contemporary issues, but pastors are often afraid or ill-equipped to actually address those issues. It will be interesting to watch how these various programs of voter registration, get out the vote, and pastor support affect the 2016 election. We should see greater impact on the nation and our culture because of Christian involvement. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Provident Films, Woodlawn, the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city. Woodlawn, in theaters October 16th.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Gene Getz and Bob Kulick in studio with us today, and if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Because they're in studio, you not only can listen to the program, you can watch it as well and see our interaction. And Bob, I guess we left you heading to Angola by yourself.
That's right.
What happened?
Well, I mean, first of all, the going into the prison was unlike any other prison I've ever gone into. I mean, you're down in Louisiana where plastic rusts, everything is, and you go into the place and it's immaculate. It's beautiful. The guards are smiling. And one of the things you notice around there is that there are 6 prison camps within Angola. Each one is surrounded by the barbed wire and the fences and all that, but the tallest building within each one is the church, the church steeple. Mm-hmm. It's higher than even the guard towers in there, and that's from Warden Burl Cain, who came there 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was the worst prison in the country.
Yes, it was. Yes, that's what we remember it for.
Yeah, on average, they had a stabbing a day, a murder every 3 days, and a third of the prison population were sex slaves. Burl Cain came in there.
Out of 6,500.
Yeah, right. And Burl Cain came in there and he said, we need to bring morality to this. Best place for morality is the Bible. And he brought that into the prison grounds. And now I tell people I wouldn't hesitate in a minute to send my daughters or my wife there. One little story that tells kind of the essence of it. At one time I was walking down a very narrow hallway and a prisoner was walking toward me there. And as we came close, he went up against the wall, flattened against the wall, and said, "After you, sir." I said, that doesn't happen in downtown Dallas, let alone in a prison where 90-some% are life termers. But now there are 26, I believe it is, prisoner-led churches on the grounds. It's just a totally changed place. And I had the opportunity, the honor to represent Dr. Getz, passing out his Life Essential Study Bibles to over 120 graduates of the Malachi Dads program. And these guys, I mean, tears were in their eyes. At the end, they all held their Bible up and cheered. And someone had told me there from Awana, said, think about this may be the first time in their lives that they've ever walked across the stage and received any type of diploma or degree, had people applauding for them. And it was, like I said, most of them were life-termers in there. There was one guy afterwards, some of the Malachi Dads leadership, they didn't have the Bibles where the graduates did. And there was one guy that was just begging me for one, said, how can we get up to the late leadership guys? And there was a guy standing next to him. His name was Ironhead. I don't think that was his given name, but they said that he was standing there, and I said, well, I tell you what, I'll arm wrestle Ironhead for it. If he beats me, I'll get Bibles to all the guys. And he shook my hand so hard, I think my whole body shook. And I said, I tell you, I'll concede the arm wrestle right there, and we got them Bibles as well.
That's so good.
Great experience. And we also got a chance to go over to the women's prison the day before, passed that out to about 20 women who are graduates of the Hannah's Gifts program, which is the sister program to the Malachi Dads program. And one quick story on that one, I had a lady come up to me afterwards after handing out the Bibles to the women, and this lady told me the story about, just what a rough time she had, how her boyfriend was in jail as well. They were bikers, and they got into all types of trouble. And she said, I'd love to get one of those Bibles, though. She goes, my boyfriend became a Christian in Angola, and he wrote me a 25-page letter saying, you need to look into this Christianity. There's something to this.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I became a Christian on my aunt's birthday. My aunt had died 3 years earlier. She had prayed for me for 25 years to become a Christian. She goes, I became a Christian on her birthday. And she goes, I would love to have one of these Bibles. I said, are you part of the Hannah's Gifts program? And she said, well, no. She said, I started it, but it's a lot of work. And she said, I dropped out after a short period of time. And I said, well, we're only giving it to the Hannah's Gifts program. And she goes, I'll join up again. If that's what it takes to get the Bible, I'll join up again.
Yes. Let me just hold up here one of the Hannah's Gifts books. We're not really talking about that today, but it's just a good illustration, again, of some other resources for the women and the men. Now, Gene, we have to finish the story because then you eventually did get to Angola, did you not?
That's right. Actually, it was my second time because, and you'll appreciate this, when I was still doing renewal, I went into Angola, and I sat in a radio studio similar to this because they have their own full-time radio program broadcasting on the campus. Burl Cain was sitting right beside me, and then over here were 5 inmates, and 3 of them were murderers. They're lifers, a rapist, and the other one I've forgotten. And I interviewed each one of these guys per program, per day, and it was really amazing to see the transformation in these guys' lives. So I had gotten acquainted with Angola. Well, then this Malachi Dad thing develops, getting the Bible to the graduates of that program, which, by the way, is ongoing. Our commitment is to gift Bibles to Malachi Dad's graduate, not just ongoing in Angola, but in other prisons around the country, because this gives them a wonderful opportunity. And even though they can't get to the internet, we're going to provide them with DVDs so they can see the videos and get to it. But anyway, following up on Bob, after he was there with Felix, my associate, they invited me back to spend a whole day with these prison pastors. And so I spent time with them and showed them how to actually use the Bible so they could prepare messages, so they could prepare their own studies to be able to, and their sermons in order to minister to these other guys. So it's just sort of an ongoing, unfolding story, Kirby, and we're just excited about where it's going to head, where it's going to take us.
Well, as you mentioned that too, the talk about giving out Bibles to others. One of the guys, the Band of Brothers from Rochester Federal Medical Center, was transferred to Leavenworth. I keep him stocked in a couple of Life Essential Study Bibles at all times. New guys that come into Leavenworth, he says, it's a shame that so many people are coming in all the time. But I said, can you imagine, rather than a guy going into prison scared, not knowing what to expect. And rather than being greeted by what you may hear you're greeted by in prison, you're greeted by a guy that hands you a Life Essential Study Bible and starts mentoring you. And so we've got these guys going on, and now we're also working on getting the Malachi Dads program in there. We've got a sponsor for the Rochester Federal Medical Center to start the Malachi Dads program up there. We already have volunteers. They have a group of outside volunteers that are set up to do whatever they need to do. And they said, we've got about 100 volunteers ready to help institute the Malachi Dads program up there, too.
Malachi Dads now, both books are, one is already translated into Spanish, second one, so it's going into prisons in Spanish-speaking areas.
If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We've already got calls coming in, so I might as well. We'll get to those in just a minute, but I thought it would be good for people to have a little bit of an understanding of what this involves. And so, Gene, again, you're taking the principles in the measure of a man, 1 Timothy 3, and really applying those and breaking them into two books. And there's a good question and answer and all sorts of verses to memorize.
That's right.
This would be good whether you're in prison or whether you're in a church. It seems to me that you really have this used in any format.
Yeah, and I got to tell you one story. How much time do we have before the break?
2 minutes, yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes. I can do that. When I was there first, those 5 guys sitting there, one they called Carolina. That was not his name. That was his nickname. And Burl Cain introduced him to me and said, I want you to meet a guy who was an animal.
Wow.
An animal.
Yes.
Well, he was. And he introduced himself, and he said, I was an animal. He actually was so mean. He was third on the FBI's most wanted list when he went in. He was angry. He's mean. These are his words. He was in lockdown 2 years at a time. Literally at times in a body cast because he would fight every day. But the Lord got a hold of him. His life was changed. And when I was there doing the pastor's conference, he actually wasn't in the sessions because he had been transferred to other prisons as a missionary, going to other prisons. But he was back on campus. I said, could I meet with Carolina? Because I got an hour before we leave. I met with him privately. He sat there with tears in his eyes, and he said, Jane, I'm going to make a promise to you, totally unsolicited. He said, every guy that I see on this campus who has the Life Essential Study Bible, I'm going to ask that person if he knows how to use it. If he says, no, I'm going to show him how. And the exciting thing was that now there are 300 Life Essential Study Bibles in the hands of the Malachi Dads graduates, as well as these pastors. So I'd appreciate prayers for that and for Carolina, because here's a transformed man that is so excited about Jesus Christ.
We're going to take a break, and we have a lot more stories to share, but I also see some of you have used some of these resources, so we're going to talk about that and talk about what we actually can develop in terms of any kind of men's ministry, whether it's in the prisons or whether it's in church or whether it's in your home. So we are just privileged to have these experts in studio with us today, so if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We'll take a break and be back right after this.
This time of year, it seems everyone's looking for a better, more affordable healthcare solution. But with costs rising and options limited, where do you turn? If you're a Christian, you turn to Miniter. It's not insurance. It's over 154,000 believers who share each other's medical bills. It's about half the cost of healthcare insurance programs. And it's fully acceptable under the law. Best of all, Miniter is based on the timeless principles found in God's Word. You never pay for things that go against your beliefs. Miniter is healthcare that fits your family and your faith.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your healthcare. For your free information guide, call 855-87-BIBLE. Not available in Montana. Miniter, affordable biblical healthcare. Call 855-87-BIBLE. That's 855-87-BIBLE.
Take Kirby and the Truth Team with you wherever you go. You can listen, you can read, you can watch. Visit the Apple or Google Play Store and download the free Point of View radio app. Get it today, the Point of View radio app. Point of View will continue after this.
You're listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
In studio with us today, Dr. Gene Getz and Bob Kulick. And if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. If you go to our website, we have a couple of links. First of all, if you click on the picture of Bob, we have a link there to awanalifeline.org. awanalifeline.org. That's where you can find out more about Malachi Dads. And we have the Heart of a Man Part 1 and 2, Heart of a Father, and some other resources. And so that will be one resource that you can certainly have access to. If you click on the picture there of Gene Getz, that will take you to BiblePrinciples.org. And of course, you can find out more about the Life Essential Study Bible, Measure of the Man. A lot of these are available in your local bookstore, but we always make it available just in case you can't find it. And we certainly do commend this to you. And in just a few minutes, I want to talk about how you can use this in your own personal ministry. I know some of you have a ministry in the prisons right now. And so we really want to equip you and arm you and empower you to do that. But also, if you even have a men's ministry in your own church, these are going to be great resources. But I thought we'd take a phone call here. And so we'll go to Texas, KCTA. And Mark, thank you for joining us today. What's your comment?
Yeah, thank you very much. I actually am ministering, or I'm working with the Malachi Dads ministry in a unit called Darrington that's south of Houston. And they have also had a seminary program. A guy named Grove Norwood has an organization called Heart of Texas, and he was so impressed with Angola that he prayed and decided to try and start something similar here, and he has been so successful, they've actually graduated their first class out of the Darrington Seminary. It's a 4-year accredited program, and they have actually got their men coming out of there and working in the prison system now. And I'm about to finish up a year with Malachi Dads that they're introducing now into the Texas prison system, and trying to find more churches that are interested in hosting those kinds of events. But it has changed a maximum security prison from a place where it was spooky to walk around to a place where people smile and give you a thumbs up when you walk down the hallway.
Wow.
Hey, Mark, do you know Mike Broyles personally? Mike?
I have actually met him, but I don't know him. He stopped by the prison, about 2 months ago, I want to say now, and Grove was there with him. But I didn't have a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, if you could go ahead and get in contact with him through Awana Lifeline and make a connection there, and maybe we would be able to somehow come into those situations and give the graduates a copy of Life Essentials Study Bible. We have people who support this ministry, so we can give them away to these individuals. So get in contact with Mike and tell him what's going on there.
And that is so key, too, to be able to, like in the Texas prison system, opening the door there. Once that door is open, other prisons within the Texas system will look at it, just like it's happening in Louisiana. And that's why I think it's so important up in Rochester to get this going up there, because that'll be the first door open into the federal system as well. So whatever state anyone happens to be in, if they have any type of contact within a prison system in that state, to get in that door, open that first door is just so essential.
Well, one of the things I mentioned, if I might, they've already gone through the Texas system. In fact, Dan Patrick was one of the people that helped originally get this established. One of my concerns is I'm working with guys who are Hispanics and desperately trying to get materials in Spanish that we can use for them and potentially to train other men. Do you have your materials in Spanish as yet?
Well, my understanding, Bob, is that Malachi Dad number 1 is already in Spanish.
Is in Spanish. And number 2 is within process. Probably months of being done in Spanish.
Yeah, so both those books will be in Spanish. I wish I could tell you that.
Dr. Getz, is your Bible in Spanish?
I wish I could tell you it was. If somebody's listening that would love to support the translation into Spanish, I'd sing "Glory, Glory," Hallelujah. Anyway, no, it is not. But we're praying that we can get it into Spanish.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for the update.
Thank you very much.
And again, let's just talk about that for just a minute. We have listeners in, I think it's 42 different states. And of course, we've talked about 2 states, Louisiana and Texas. Okay, we're down to another 40 that are individuals that could do something with their state prison system. So, Bob, what would you recommend? How can they contact you? How can they begin this process?
Gene had mentioned Mike Broyles. He's with Awana Lifeline. Is probably the best contact. Like I say, clicking on that website will take you to it, awanalifeline.org. But getting in touch with them, and they could walk you through the entire process, put you in touch with people that they may already have in the state that are starting to open doors. It's all about getting those connections made so that they can get into the, as I say, once you're in one door, the door starts opening up across the states.
I might mention on our website, we have a link right now to awanalifeline.org, and you go about halfway down, you'll see it says connect with us, and then there's a way that you can connect by mail, by phone, by email, whatever that might be, and that would be a good way to get started. And we might have you guys come back months from now and see what that actually did, because you have an opportunity to change the nature of the prison system in your state. And I certainly think that we have some great success stories now. We already heard from what happened in Louisiana. Now we just heard from Mark what is happening in the state of Texas. So just see if we can work down a few more states. What do you think?
Well, I think that's great. God is at work here. I mean, in the story of Angola with Burl Cain, as you know, I'm sure you've interviewed people about that, but when Burl first went, and of course I mention this because it was the inception of all this that's happening, where he went home one evening and his mother, but he's the guy that had to give the signal to put a person to sleep. And his mom said, "Burl, did you share Christ with that man?" And he said, "No." She said, "Burl, this is your opportunity, your responsibility." And from that point forward, with every guy that Burl had to pull the plug on, if we could use that language, which is very pretty, he shared Christ. And there are situations, he shared with me the story of holding a man's hand when he gave the signal. And the man had a sense of peace as he literally put him to death. And he's led a lot of men to Christ that he's had to put to death. The state sentenced them, but he has to carry out the order.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of incredible changes that have taken place on that prison through the gospel of Jesus. And as you know, USA Today has been out there. Barbara Walters has been out there. All your major people have been out there. What can they say? These guys tell the story of Jesus and how he's changed their lives.
Power of the transformed life that we certainly are talking about. Gene, for just a minute, at least before I take another break, let's talk about how people can use some of these resources in the church. I know right now I'm trying to mobilize some of our listeners that already have some aspect of prison ministry in their states, but we also have a lot of individuals. We have pastors. We have Sunday school leaders. Matter of fact, I know sometimes we have seminary students that just about now get out of class and are listening to the radio. What would you say to them about how they can use Measure of a Man or Malachi Dads in their own ministry right there in the church?
Well, the Measure of a Man, of course, as you said, it's been in print. Would you believe it's never gone out of print since 1974?
Wow.
Figure that out. Well, here's the solution. It's not because I wrote it. It's because I borrowed the outline from Paul.
First Timothy,
where he got it.
Yeah, 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I often say we'll get to heaven. If he'll get the rewards, I'll get penalized for plagiarism. I think it is common property. But basically, the thing is so exciting, and you mentioned that original copy way back, that I have guys now that come up to me when they were in college back then, and now they're older, and they say, "Gene, this book changed my life. I was in a men's group." And so God continues to use the Measure of a Man with men's groups, small group studies, 1-on-1, 2x2, 4x4s, where they really can go through this process. And I might just mention, you just alluded to it, is that Becker Books now is publishing a new edition, and there'll be a QR code, 40 of them, with 40 videos that they can access on their cell phone. And what man doesn't have a cell phone today and a smartphone?
20 chapters, 40 videos, yeah.
Yeah, right. Intro and at the end. And they can keep their eyes open for that. It'll be another year before it comes out. But still the present copy is available. Malachi Dads material, though I really designed it to be used in the prison, can also be used just by men's groups. And the stories I tell in these books about prisoners, real life prisoners that I've encountered or have heard about, they'll just enjoy those stories. It just illustrates that God can change people's lives.
And being all education levels within our prison system, it's an easy read.
It is.
So that makes it good for really any level, from kids reading it in some cases all the way up to the adults.
So again, some great material, then a memory verse, then some places where you can do a homework assignment, and actually a great way to interact with individuals and grow young boys into men. Let's come back and we'll continue our conversation. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. If you'd like to join us, we might get another phone call in, 1-800-351-1212. But did want to spend a few minutes talking about the Life Essential Study Bible. Now, anybody that's listened to this program knows we've had Gene Getz in here before and talking about how it is revolutionary. We have a link to BiblePrinciples.org, so you can find out more about that there. And again, you can probably find it in your local bookstore. But Gene, this is, first of all, just a 7-year study. Of course, a lot of of jokes about it only took you 7 years.
7 years, right.
But in some respects, this is your whole life, because what you have done over these years is study this, and you're really big about finding those very big principles that are super cultural, that apply, doesn't matter whether you're in Africa or Asia, in the United States. And then you've produced videos, but then there are QR codes, and most people know what those are. They've seen them by now. When you first started talking about that, I had to explain it on the air, but I think most people know what a QR code is. You take your phone, and that then takes you to watch you on video, and you're constantly updating that. So you have a Bible, but you also have access to all those videos, and it doesn't matter if you're in an internet cafe in Indonesia, or whether you have limited internet access in Africa, or whether you're in the top of the line fast internet in the United States. You can watch you teach the Bible online by going through your Bible. And it's just a remarkable piece of technology.
You said that better than I could say it. I mean, you put that all together, and it is exciting because we do hear from people all over the world. I was sitting in, where was it, Amman, Jordan. Mm-hmm. And I was in a little room where they had a Wi-Fi, and took my phone, connected to the Wi-Fi, and 10 seconds I was teaching in Amman, Jordan. It's absolutely amazing, and it's humbling to realize that when the Bible actually came off the press, people could access it anywhere in the world where there's an internet connection. And but the stories that we're getting, literally almost every week, voluntarily, we get stories of people's lives that are being changed for the first time in their life. They understand the Bible. And as you said, the whole Bible kind of holds together. That was my goal, around these 1,500 principles to live by. And I just, during the break, I shared about this young Roman Catholic guy that was just married, came to the church, and I was presenting it, bought a copy, just found out about a week ago. For 3 years, he has been studying the Bible. He gets up in the morning. This, by the way, is convicting. 5 o'clock in the morning, and he studies for about an hour, watches the videos as well. And his wife stopped by and said, Gene, you wouldn't believe the transformation in his life, and he's starting over again. And I verified that. I picked up the phone, called him, and he said, Gene, it's life transforming. So, this is the kind of thing that really makes that 7 years worthwhile.
Yeah, but 1,500 principles to live by.
That's right.
Which, again, is one of your gifts. You and I both share a real desire to take the Bible and to give it some shoe leather, to give it some practicality. There are times when sometimes scriptures are taught without any kind of connection to what I'm going to use that principle for in my life. And so I just really do commend people to the Life Essential Study Bible, because those 1,500 principles will take you quite a while just to work your way through. If you take the time to watch all those videos, you recognize, as you said just a minute ago, this young man for 3 years has been trying to watch every one of those videos.
That's
and
right.
then you're updating them from time to time as well.
Right.
So that even as you've gone through it once, you can come back and find, oh, well, Gene Getz had a few other insights with that video that I saw before, because it's been replaced.
Right. You'll see me older, too. By the way, if they simply go to BiblePrinciples.org and just check on the store, it can take them, the people can order it online. If they do order it online, there's a place where they can say, would Gene sign it? And I'll sign it personally, and then we'll pay the shipping for anywhere that they would like to get a copy.
Over 250 hours of 1,500 video principles. I mean, this is just incredible.
I like to say it this way. You can carry around with your iPhone 1,500 little television programs.
Yes.
Anywhere. You can connect. You don't have to set, your player to tape it and retape it. It's there.
Yeah.
1,500 little 15-minute or 7-minute video programs.
Pretty good legacy. Bob, let me come back to you for just a minute, because you've been using this in the prison, and you actually, I think, have some individuals who are going to be going to seminary as a result of this.
Yes, it is very exciting. In fact, literally hours ago, before getting on this program, I got the final word that we've been approved to do this. A group very generously has donated the resources to be able to do this from Dayspring Bible College and Seminary up in Chicago area. We now have part of the band of brothers that we're studying through the Life Essential Study Bible have taken it so far that they really want to get involved further and wanted to go to seminary. And we've got 3 guys, one in Leavenworth now, 2 of them up in Rochester. One of them had led the largest street gang in Chicago. And when I talked to him, he said, when I get out, I want to stay a leader. I just want to be a different kind of leader now. And so he's going to go to seminary and come out a totally changed man. One of the other guys I was talking to, when I mentioned to him that there's a possibility to go to seminar, his eyes got as big as dollar bills. And he said, yes, I want to do this. And he emailed me the next day and he said, Bob, I can't tell you how excited I am about this. I've been feeling like I've been getting this call to go to seminary, but he thought, I'm a convict. Who's going to let me in? I don't fit in. This isn't going to work. And so he said, I've started the process of, he said, I figured I'd become a truck driver and I'm doing the work to do that, to support my family when I get out. He said, then you walk in and say, hey, how do you like to go to seminary? And he said, the door was open there. And it's just, that's what I was saying. I mentioned to you earlier in Matthew, it says that we should visit prisoners, in people in prison. For years, I always thought that was to provide them comfort. I'm convinced now, after doing the work in several prisons around the country, it's for us to see God's hand at work in prisons. It's taking place there. And when guys get to the lowest point of their lives, a lot of time that's the only way they can turn. Formed through the Malachi Dads program, through the Life Essential Study Bible, and now how exciting to have guys going to seminary that were once leading gangs.
That just is amazing. Let me again give you an assignment, as we always try to give you an action item, and the action item I think here is to take some of the material, maybe the video from Bible Principles, and put it on your Facebook page, or maybe even take this entire podcast, the podcast or some others, and send it to somebody else that needs to know about that. Maybe a pastor needs to know about that. Maybe you know somebody that's doing prison ministry and they need to know about Malachi Dads. They need to know about Life Essential Study Bible. Let's see if we can empower and encourage you to take some of this material, educate some others, and see what we can do. So I appreciate you both giving us an hour today. It's a fast hour. Gene, you know how that goes, right?
Oh, yeah.
It goes fast.
And it's fun.
I think we covered a lot in 1 hour, and just it's been great to have both of you in studio. So Gene and Bob, let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it again. And one little correction. I think you said eyes as big as dollar bills. Do you mean silver dollars?
Silver dollars. Yes, that's right. Thank you. As soon as I said that.
Well, let me just encourage you again to go to a couple of places. First of all, we have BiblePrinciples.org, and there is a great resource there for the Life Essential Study Bible. And if you'd like to get it autographed by Gene Getz, I'm sure he'd be glad to do that. We have the link as well to AwanaLifeline.org. AwanaLifeline.org. You don't have to remember all that. Just go to the website or click on the picture of Bob, and that will give you what you need to know. So let me just, before we run out of time, mention that tomorrow we're going to talk about apologetics with J. Warner Wallace. He's got a new book out. We talk about how to articulate a biblical worldview and how to defend a biblical worldview. Second hour, we have one of the actresses from War Room, and then the second hour, one of the individuals from Woodlawn. So a couple of Christian movies out that are having such an incredible impact. So you're going to have a chance to hear about that. And later on in the week, we're going to be talking with all sorts of guests. So I hope that you'll join us every single day on Point of View. And again, as I mentioned, we are so grateful that we were able to meet our match. We'll talk more about that as time goes on. But if you'd like to support this ministry, we would greatly appreciate that as well. You can find everything we've talked about on the website, pointofview.net. I want to thank Andrew, Catherine, and Chris for their help behind the scenes. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
From PureFlix Entertainment and Provident Films comes Woodlawn. Witness the true story of a spiritual awakening that saved a high school and shook a city.
I'm asking you right now to stand up and make a decision.
Woodlawn. Experience one hope, one truth, and one way. Starring Academy Award winner Jon Voight and Sean Astin. Woodlawn in theaters this Friday. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Have you ever wanted to walk where Jesus walked? To stand in places where the Apostle Paul proclaimed the gospel and saw the world and people's lives changed? In May of 2016, you can do just that on a 15-day tour of Israel and Greece with Point of View's very own Kirby Anderson. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience the Bible and history in places God chose to begin the spread of His message of grace. Join Kirby and Point of View for Journey to Jerusalem and Journeys of Paul. Learn more by clicking on the banner at pointofview.net. You've read the Bible. Here's a chance to live it. pointofview.net. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.